We're recording, so hey, everybody wave to the camera. Woohoo. All right. See, we're in movies. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Let's go over Hip Hop 1. Now, I want to remind you that if you guys want to ask a question, or if you just want to comment on something, it doesn't even have to be a question, or if you want to challenge my interpretation of something, I full on welcome that. And normally, if we were in the classroom, you could just raise your hand and I would see it. But when I'm sharing my screen, I have a very limited view of the number of students. I can only see a few at a time. And so if you want to say something or ask a question, you have to unmic and speak up. That way I can know that you have a question or a comment. And like I said, I really welcome student contributions, and I welcome student challenges. Like if you think that my interpretation of something is different from what you think, we can discuss it. And then everybody benefits from that. Okay, Alejandro, you have a question?
Oh no, I don't have a question. I was just looking at the participants and I saw the raise hand button and I pressed it on accident.
Oh, no worries. Rahi, do you have another question?
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay. All righty. All right, guys, let's have a look at this then. All right. So do you think James McBride is writing about a real nightmare he had? And I know I've answered that a couple of times. The answer is no. But one thing I want to highlight, though, on this question is, see how it says explain your answer? So if you watch the instructional video, which I think most of you did, you know my interpretation of that is it just represents a big fear that he had. So most of you put that answer down, but that's about it. And so when you have the opportunity to explain your answer, that's when I'm expecting you to show what you're thinking and why you think something. Now, maybe your answer is, I don't know, I think this because that's what you told us to think. But I really want you to start developing your own thinking. And, you know, it's kind of like in math. You know, if the simple equation is 2x equals 10, then we know x equals 7. And so you don't necessarily have to show your work on that. You just know it. But showing your work shows that you know how to think about it. Now, does anyone have a question about my math skills when I said 2x equals 7? Okay, anyway, moving on. So this is like the math equivalent of you showing your work. So you came up with the right answer, but how do you know it's the right answer? Okay, what's the evidence that supports what the right answer is? That's what you're supposed to do and explain your answer. Okay, you're explaining your thinking is what you're doing. Okay, so if it's not a real nightmare, what is the point of his story? And I think there's a lot going on with this story. Number one, it serves as an anecdote. An anecdote is a short little story at the beginning of an article, which it's a story that illustrates a point. Okay, so here's the point: is his biggest fear is that his daughter comes home with this disrespectful, thug attitude having rapper. Okay. But there's more to it than that. He also, during the same story, recognizes his own hypocrisy because he was a knucklehead back in the day too, and he's not allowing for this guy to be a young knucklehead like he was. And so what that does is it kind of sets us up for his change in attitude, his change in heart. So on one hand, this is what he thought about these rappers now. I mean, before. He realizes he's being a hypocrite. So it really hints at his change of heart. So that's really what's going on. That's the point of the story, showing his metamorphosis really on his thinking. Okay, question 3, what does McBride mean when he states there would be no Martin Luther King moments in our immediate future? So the answer that most people wrote was that there was not going to be a peaceful resolution, okay, that these guys were going to fight. But here's what was really interesting. This is one of the biggest misconceptions I saw quite a bit. A lot of people assumed, based on this, that James McBride and his buddy Bill were white and that these rappers were black and that there was a racial tension involved in this. Now, look at what the text says really plainly. The beginning of paragraph 3, there were no white people in the room. Though I confess I wish there had been, if only to hide the paleness of my own frightened face. So he flat out tells us very directly there were no white people in the room. So this is clearly not a black-white racial issue. And so what I was wondering is, like, how did students miss that? How did students miss that very clear statement that there were no white people there and just assume that this was a moment of racial tension? There's a couple of things. Number one, context. When he said there would be no Martin Luther King moment, that puts black-white race relationships kind of in our brain. So there is something in the context. But I also think that because of the cultural climate that we're in, with all the race-related protests that are going on around the country, we're just being inundated with it all day, every day for the past several months, right? And so sometimes when we go into a reading situation, we bring in our worldview, our background, our immediate context into that reading situation, and that helps interpret the message. Now, when you're doing critical reading, first off is the number one thing is to try and understand the author's message. And so we want to try and leave all of our cultural background, all of our worldview, all of our biases. We want to try and leave those and put those aside temporarily. It's really hard to do. But the reason is because we only want to get what McBride is trying to say. And before we form any opinions on his argument, we want to make sure we fully understand the argument. So when we first start reading, when we're doing critical reading, we're only looking at the context that the author gives us, okay? And all of our personal beliefs, issues, whatever, we got to try and leave behind temporarily. Now, after we fully understand the article, that's when we start evaluating the article. To what extent do we agree or disagree with him? And that's where our worldview comes back in, okay? Just because he says it and I assign it doesn't mean you have to agree with it. And so, you know, your experience, your worldview, your cultural values, all those things come in at that point, okay? But not until we get to the full understanding of his argument. Okay, so if this is not about race, which a lot of people thought, what is it about? And it's really more of a generational thing than anything else. James McBride is African American. He's a jazz musician, and he really takes pride in that African American form of music, which is jazz. Maybe you guys didn't realize this, but jazz started in the African American community and spread to the broader community. Just like rap started in the African American community and it has spread to the broader community. So it's basically one generation's music versus the next generation's music. Okay, it's a generational argument more than it is anything else. And for evidence to support that, if you look back to his little anecdote at the beginning, the nightmare, he just flat out says it. He says, "It is no longer my world, it is his." So McBride is the old guy who's been passed over, and the rapper is the new guy who's getting all the attention. Okay, so this is not about race at all. It's more of a generational thing. Okay. Let's move on to question 4. He says, what point is McBride trying to make when he contrasts himself and the other journalism students with the rappers who crashed the party? Okay, so these are the guys who went to college. These are the guys who did everything the traditional way you're supposed to. You go to college, you get trained, you go out and you get a job and you start doing your thing. Well, their thing was to report on what was going on. Okay, and they want to be the real storytellers of life in their community. But he discovers that he's not the real storyteller. Okay, he says the real storytellers of the American experience came from the world of the guy that Bill had just slapped. The rappers are the tellers of the American story, at least the American story that they were concerned with at the moment, which was life in the South Bronx. And these guys had nothing. They had no training, no money, no credibility. All right, so McBride and his buddies would automatically be thinking, we are superior to them. We're going to be the superior storytellers because we really know what's going on. We went to college. But these guys had a story to tell, and they had what McBride and his buddies lacked, is they had the talent. All right, so you got the haves, college guys, and you got the have-nots. But the have-nots were the ones who were really influential. And that's why it's hard for them to accept. And that's why there's a little bit of jealousy. It's like you could tell he's desperately crying out for people to listen to him, but they're listening to the dude rapping on the street corner. Okay. Question 5 says, McBride said that rap held everything I wanted to leave behind. And in your opinion, what does rap represent that McBride wanted to leave behind? So in retrospect, I wish I would have asked this question during part 2, because part 2 really tells us more about the negative aspects of life in the inner city that McBride is really concerned about. And I think that gives us a hint as to the things that he wanted to leave behind. So I'll save answering this question until we get to that section. It probably would have been better later on in the article. Okay, question 6. What was the real cost for McBride in ignoring rap for 26 years? How is this worse considering he's a journalist? Okay, so covering the significant events are what he was trained to do. That's why he went to school. And in ignoring it, he missed the most important cultural event of his lifetime. Now, why is that so bad? It's because you can't go back in time and redo that. Like he kind of realizes with regret that he could have been there all along, and he's like coming to the party 26 years too late. Okay, so on one hand, personally, he missed out on it. On the other hand, professionally, he should have been right in there. And so there's an integrity issue, a professional integrity issue by him willingly ignoring something really important that was going on. And that's what makes it worse. So not only did he miss out on the personal side of it, but worse, he really missed out on the professional side of it. And journalists are supposed to put their personal feelings aside and just cover what's important. And he was so prejudiced against the form of music that he just couldn't see past that. Good for him for admitting it later on though, right? All right, let's move on to part 2. All right, I kind of talked about this the other day, but a lot of people just missed the idea on this one. What do rappers and the Beatles and Elvis have in common? Okay, it's not just popularity. When Elvis hit the scene, the older generation did not accept him. They thought he was disrespectful. They thought that he, just because he became so popular so fast, that he was just a slacker and would eventually just fade away. They thought his dance moves were vulgar, right? So I don't know if you guys ever went to a middle school dance or something like that. Maybe this is no big deal anymore, but at Warren some years ago, we had to have an official rule against twerking. Like if you twerked while you were dancing, you know, you'd get busted for it. So we had the no twerk zone. Anyway, Elvis, what he was doing, people then were kind of viewing it as older people view twerking now. If that's a good correlation for you guys. It was looked at as a vulgar, kind of a sexually vulgar movement. And so he was a rebel because of that. When the Beatles hit the scene and Beatlemania was just crazy. I was born in 1965, so I was alive when that was going on, but I was too young to really know what was going on. Plus, my dad listened to country western music. I didn't get any of the cool stuff until I was a teenager. But anyway, the Beatles were also looked at as disrespectfully. When they were being interviewed in America, they would pop off. They would goof around. They wouldn't take the questions seriously. They had long hair. Girls went absolutely nuts when the Beatles were around. And the older generation just thought, oh my gosh, our world's going to hell in a handbasket because of these Beatles, right? And so they were looked at as the disrespectful kids of their time as well. So that's the point of comparison between Elvis, the Beatles, and the rappers. It's, you know, they're disrespectful, they're defiant, and they're going to lead our kids in the wrong direction. That's what they have in common. That's the point of comparison. Okay, now this question about moorings. Okay, moorings are those things out in the water that boats can dock to. So let's get right to the line here. Okay, so it says this defiant culture of song, graffiti, and dance, collectively known as hip hop. What McBride point he's making there is this isn't just music, this is a full lifestyle. Okay, song, graffiti, dance. He could have thrown in fashion as well. And hip hop has ripped popular music from its moorings in every society it has permeated. People take a lot of pride in their music. They really identify with their music. Sometimes you see people dressing according to the style of music that they like. Okay, and it's because people so easily and deeply identify with their style of music. And so what this is saying is hip hop has come in and it's kind of overturned all that. Like instead of these styles of music, these genres of music being safe and secure as like the society's popular music that everybody identifies with, rap has come in and pushed it out of the way, and it's kind of taken over, and it's permeated every society. So he says in Brazil, rap rivals samba. So samba would be the cultural music that, you know, defines the culture. Rap has come in and changed that. In China, teens are spraying graffiti on the Great Wall. So they're going against their government and their culture by these acts of vandalism on the Great Wall of China. And in France, it's being blamed for all sorts of civil unrest. And so basically, hip hop is coming in and it's challenging society, and it is stirring up trouble for the traditional things that people love and believe. Okay. Question 9 says, what are the 3 conditions McBride credits for the production of hip hop? And it's these things: the joblessness in the inner city. 40% of black males in New York are jobless. 1 in 3 black males will end up in prison. And then the life expectancy of Black men in the US ranks below Sri Lanka and Colombia. So Black men in the United States have life expectancy lower than third world countries. All right, so what he's saying, as long as these three conditions continue to exist, we're going to keep getting this rap music, because this rap music comes from the anger, despair, the feeling of growing up under these conditions. And this kind of is giving a voice to the people experiencing that. That's kind of what he means here. Okay. Question 10 and 11 are really two parts of the same idea. What's the hard part, that the part that he doesn't want to embrace from hip hop, and what does he willingly embrace? And so really what he doesn't like is the violence of it. He just says, to confess a love for music that at least in part embraces violence is no easy matter. So he's acknowledging that rap music embraces and encourages violence. Okay. And the part that he thinks is good about it, though, is that what it actually does, though, is it sheds light on the negative things that are happening in the inner city community. It's kind of the idea, like, let's say you're not feeling well or something's wrong, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, you have a disease. Well, that's bad, right? That's bad news. We don't like that. But the good part about getting a diagnosis from a doctor is that that's what you need to put you on the path to healing. Once they know what's wrong with you, they can start trying to, heal it. And so that's kind of the point he's making here about rap, is that, yes, it shows these problems that exist, and it brings them to light. And now that they're out in the open, now we can start doing something about it. Okay? All right. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. And do you guys have any questions about our two halves of the article? Okay, so I've already put it on the on your homepage today. I've got the full article there, and I don't think there are any questions attached to it. Between today and class time tomorrow, you need to read that article. It's a short read, it's 12 paragraphs. And now that we've had this discussion, now that you have a better idea on what he's talking about, you're going to be able to understand more as you go. Okay, so tomorrow's class, we're going to start getting at what is his main idea. So what's the main idea of his argument? And then what does he offer up for support? Once we've done that, then we can start formulating our own opinions on what it's all about. All right, let me show you one more thing. I think I just want to show you where that article is. Let's go back to our homepage. And if you look down here, it says Hip Hop Planet full article. Click on that. And it comes up. Okay, guys, so like I said, it's a short read, but it's important that we go over that one more time before tomorrow to start to cement some of these ideas and make more sense out of these ideas before we start our discussion. Okay. At this point, I'm going to stop recording.